This is part 1 for lesson 8.4, radian measure. So we've talked about radians, mostly that you don't want your calculator to be in radian mode. That's really what we've talked about, but we haven't talked about what a radian is. So when we measure something, we have different units of measurement. So if I measure how long my iPad is, I might use inches, I might use centimeters, I could use millimeters. It wouldn't be maybe as practical. I could use yards. That again would not be very practical. Feet, not very practical. Kilometers, not very practical. So sometimes certain measurements lend themselves better to a situation. So to measure the length of my iPad, inches or centimeters, they're both different though. If I say 3 inches, that's not the same thing as 3 centimeters. And so you can't interchange them. And that's when we talk about degrees and radians, we're talking about two different methods of measurement or two different units of measurement. So we can't interchange them. And that's why it's very important that your calculator is in the right mode. So let's talk about what a radian is. So first of all, 1 radian, it comes from the word radius, but it's the angle formed when the length of the arc opposite the angle is equal to the radius of the circle. So looking at a picture, here's my picture. Okay, I've got a circle, and the radius is x. Okay, that's my radius. The radius is x. When I can take this red piece right here and put it down, think about like a piece of licorice, I guess. If it's this long, and if you can wrap this around where it meets that, this is also x. So you've got this piece that is kind of like an equilateral triangle, but it's not a triangle because one of the sides is curved. When you have that situation, this is 1 radian. Okay, so within a circle, any circle, you have this 1 radian, and then if you do it again, you have another radian, and if you do it again, another radian. So in a half circle, guess how many radians you have? About 3. But you have exactly 3.14157. Does that number look familiar to you? And so in a half circle, you actually have pi radians. So from here to here, as far as 180 degrees, that's the same thing as pi. So 180 degrees is the same as pi. It's kind of like if we have 2.2 pounds is about the same as 1 kilogram. And so we've got the same weight, but it's just in 2 different units of measurement. In a circle, we have the same part that we're talking about. If we measure it in degrees, it's 180. If we measure it in radians, it's about 3.14. And so that would mean that in one whole circle, you have 1 pi, which is half your circle, and so the whole circle would be 2 pi. So 2 pi is equal to an entire circle, which is 360 degrees. And so that's what a radian is. Now, reviewing, the circumference of a circle is 2 pi r. That's the formula for a circumference of a circle. And this first part of the lesson is just putting a couple of things together. So in any circle, there are 2 pi radians. So that's what I just said right there, which means 360 degrees is equal to 2 pi radians, and 180 degrees is equal to 1 pi radians. And so you need to make sure that you understand that if we say 180 degrees, that's different than just saying 180. If you just say 180, you're talking about radians. How many circles is that? That's a lot of circles. It's like 30 or more circles. So when you say like the angle is 5, you better make sure you say degrees so that you don't mean radians. Now to convert degrees to radians, using what we know here, if 180 degrees is equal to 1 pi radian, then to turn 1 radian into, or 1 degree into radians, we're going to divide by pi, and you get 180 over pi is equal to 1 radian. And so that's our conversion method. And so if I give you a number in degrees and you need it to be in radians or vice versa, you can use that formula. So number 1, it says half of a circle is half of 2 pi, which would be pi. So what would a fourth of a circle be? A fourth of a circle, a fourth of 2 pi, that would be 1/4 times 2, which is 2/4, so 1/2 pi. And the way that we write that is pi halves. So if you think about in a circle, and this is a little bit tricky because people think of a circle and they think of like pie, like you eat a pie. And one circle is 2 pi. We're used to thinking like half and half. This is pi and this is pi. So if we talk about a fourth of a circle, we're talking about this much of it. So that's half of pi, so that's pi halves. So you have pi halves, pi halves, pi halves, pi halves, and all of those together would make 2 pi. How much of a circle is 45 degrees? So if we think of a circle and we're thinking of 45 degrees, so again we start here because that's 0 degrees. This is 90 degrees, so 45 would be halfway in between. How much of the whole circle is that? We've got 1, 2, and so we'd have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's an eighth of a circle. So if I take 2 pi divided by 8, in radians, 45 degrees would be the same thing as pi over 4. Now another way that you can do that is use our formula. So if I give you 45 degrees and I want to change that into radians, I can say 45 times, well actually let me do it the other way. Let me give you a different example. If I've got 2 radians and I want to know how many degrees that is, I'm going to do 180 divided by pi times 2 because that's in radians. And so I'm going to calculate that, and it's 360 divided by pi. And so you actually just do 360 divided by pi on your calculator, and that's going to come out to be 114.6 or so. And so in a circle, 2 radians would be about 114 degrees. Now if I want to go the opposite way, if I want to go from degrees to radians, so 45 degrees, if I want to turn that into radians, the way I remember it is I need pi to be part of my number. And so you're going to take 45 and you're going to multiply it by the reciprocal of that because we're trying to do the opposite. And so I'm going to have 45 pi over 180. And so reducing that fraction, 45 goes into 45 once and it goes into 180 4 times. So it's pi over 4. So that's another way you can do that. So some of the numbers are really common, like 45 degrees, but some of them are not so much. Like 2 radians is not a really common measurement. Okay, so some examples. How many radians is 4 degrees? So I'm going from degrees to radians, so I need pi to be part of my answer. So I'm going to take 4 and I'm going to multiply it by pi over 180. And so 4 pi over 180, and I want you to reduce your fraction. So you're going to need to think about how many times does 4 go into 180, and you're going to figure that out. And so that's going to come out to be pi over 45. And so that's what I'm showing you right there. So anyway, to summarize, degrees, if you're changing degrees to radians, you're going to multiply by pi over 180. If you're going from radians to degrees, you're going to go 180 over pi. Basically, you want to either get pi, which if you're trying to turn it into radians, you need to get pi, or get rid of pi, because if you're talking about degrees, you don't want pi to be part of your answer. So that's kind of how I remember that. Okay, so to practice, let's find radian measures, and we're going to label our circle with the radian measure we have. So let's go 30 degrees. So we're going to sketch where that is. So 30 degrees is about right there. How many radians is that? So you can think about if this whole half of a circle, if that much is 1 pi, then what's 30 degrees? What fraction of it is that? So if we have 30 degrees and 60 degrees and 90 degrees and then 120 and 150, there are 6 of those. So 30 degrees in radians would be pi divided by 6. If you want to do 30 times pi over 180, that's also going to give you pi over 6. So what I'm going to do on my circle is I'm going to just draw this, and this is what you should have on your paper. This is going to become important. We're going to have pi over 6. That's the same as 30 degrees. So I'm going to put 30 degrees over here also. Okay, number 6, 150 degrees. So 150 degrees, we just saw that. It's right there. So 150 degrees. I can change that using my formula. If I change it to radians, I'm going to need to get radians in my answer. So divide by 10, and then 15 over 18 is 5/6 pi. So I can write 5 pi over 6. That's how many radians 150 degrees is. Go ahead and pause and see if you can get 7 through 10. sketch it on your paper, and then also write the degrees and the radians on your paper as well. Okay, I've got everything filled in there. These are really common measurements, and so if you look like at number 8 and number 9, 60 degrees was pi thirds, so doesn't it make sense that 120, which is twice that, would be 2 pi thirds? If you look at 30 degrees and 150 degrees, 150 is 30 times 5. So if 30 degrees was pi 6, doesn't it make sense that 150 degrees would be 5 times pi over 6? So this is going to be really important, this type of picture right here with the circle and the different degrees and radians, and so we're going to get into that a lot more in this unit, but that's a really important piece right now. Okay, you're now ready to go to the second part of the video for the second part of the lesson.